whenever we are stressed. It could be stress from our work lives or personal lives. It could be stress from the environment if we have imposed toxins and chemicals. Let's say that we have the infamous plugins in our environment and they are.
Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for being here. Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. I must start out by asking, what does peak performance mean to you?
Wow, that is really a good question. It's so interesting because to me, as an individual, it means being able to function without interruption and really achieve the goals, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, that I set for myself, and being able to show up in my life in the way that I really know I'm capable of doing. And when we have purpose, I think that becomes an even bigger story. We have so much behind us that's pushing us. And if we falter in our performance in any of those categories, it can really paralyze us and limit our ability to fulfill our potential.
When you said being able to function without interruption, what does that mean?
So it's interesting because in my experience, very likely why I do what I do, I witnessed people very unsuspectingly being undermined. So whether it's a quality of life or whether it's a severe illness, interrupts people and can stop them in their tracks. It might even just slow them down and limit their full range of, imagine playing golf and not being able to swing fully through. It's going to limit the outcome and your game is going to be off, and that's frustrating. It's that way in life. I think when we experience those limits, sometimes we take them on as who we are, and just that's a limitation that is within me, when in fact it may be a limitation that we can do something about.
You lost your parents at a young age, and that influenced your journey into DNA health and research. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it wasn't a rapid journey, I'll say that. My mom passed away when I was 3, and my dad died when I was 20, and I was an only child. And so it really impacted me in a way that I questioned all my life, really, where there has to be a better way. Why would this happen to them? I think that would propel me into a negative spiral and instead I just kept thinking there has to be a better way. And I was seeking it, but I wasn't always focused on health. When I finally hit that point of realizing I had some level of control was when I started having children of my own. And when I was expecting my first child, I realized that I had always expected to die young. And it was subconscious, but it was always there. And that really shook me because it shook me into reality of just, we have to do something different as individuals. But what do we need to do differently? That's the question. And at the time, the DNA had not been sequenced when I was having my first child. But what I did change were things that we knew then were influences, things like nutrition and environment, being exposed to chemicals, things like that. And so I really worked through those foundational changes and addressed any kind of symptoms at somewhat of a guessing level. I was guessing what was maybe going to make a change to it and improve my performance. And then when the DNA was sequenced and they started in right around 2009, a lot of the DNA research around health was accumulating. Prior to that, it was all focused on disease. It's valid information, but it's really not taking us where we want to go, because I don't want to hear that I have a 40% greater risk of a disease and then drop me off at the corner. I want to know what I can do about it. And so that information about what you can do to leverage your DNA and support your body in a very specific way is what I've been working on officially since about 2000.
For those who are unfamiliar with some of the verbiage that we're going to use in our call today, can you explain the difference between genetics and epigenetics and nutrigenomics?
Sure. So genetics would be considered what our composition of genes are. So what do we get from our family, from our parents? So you get one allele from mom and one allele from dad for each gene, for each SNP on each gene, technically. So that's genetics. That's our composition. Epigenetics is what influences our genes. So you think of what's over our genes, and that would be our lifestyle, our diet, and our environment. So things that we can truly influence that then influence our DNA. It influences the expression of our DNA, and that is extremely powerful. And then nutrigenomics would be the use of nutrition and supplementation to influence genes and again, support genes. It's very strategic. What is interesting is it really does require a considerable mind shift, because what we've been taught is not what's really serving us. And we're experiencing that in the last probably 4 years. We've really started to see all of the reasons why it's not serving us. And with the help of a lot of publications and a lot of requirements now, it's challenged us to think for ourselves. And I think that's been a good thing, because we really do need to take control of our health, and we need to leverage the knowledge that we can gain about our own bodies so that we can personalize our approach.
What are certain things that we can do once we have that understanding of our own DNA?
What you can do is, I really want people to be able to create a personalized action plan, whether that is in relation to their nutrition, their workouts, their supplementation, their sleep patterns and sleep schedule, being able to give their bodies what they need in terms of detoxification. When it comes to certain areas of function, we know what can contribute to disease, things like inflammation and oxidative stress and gut health. And all of those categories are things that we can look at in our genes and really understand the underpinnings or the root cause of potential disease before it happens. So when we look at the way we've always done things, and we understand that it's been a wait and see approach in the conventional ways, we would wait, we would go to the doctor, we would get something to address the symptom, and we would be somewhat happy about it because we felt some relief. But it was rarely lasting relief, and it was never addressing the root cause. And that's why symptoms come back over and over again. When people get headaches or when people have any kind of sleep issue and things that are definitely going to sneak up on us later and in different ways too. That is probably the most exciting part of it, is that when we address the root cause early on, all of the cascade effect of those symptoms is disrupted, and no longer is that disease going to be in our future.
You mentioned inflammation, oxidative stress. These are some words that I'm finding a lot on the social media these days. Can you help our audience understand what these two things mean?
Sure. So inflammation, in the way that we would experience inflammation, it could be joint pain. It could be puffiness in the mornings when we first wake up. We could feel like we're a little stiff. It could be that we have inflammation, can even cause skin disruptions and skin issues. But where it comes from can be internal or external. It can be from an external source that is contributing. An example would be if we are eating a food that is not something that we can process efficiently, it may cause inflammation in the digestive tract, which then become, if we eat it in a repeated way and we eat it regularly, we can then develop systemic inflammation, which is inflammation throughout the body. And I have clients who have said they realize that when they eat a particular food, that they have pain in one particular joint or one particular area of the body, or they wake up feeling really puffy and stiff. And that is, when short of doing your DNA, that is probably that first step, is to be very observant of your body and appreciate. So that's inflammation. Oxidative stress is whenever we are stressed. It could be stress from our work lives or personal lives. It could be stress from the environment if we have imposed toxins and chemicals. Let's say that we have the infamous plugins in our environment, and they are emitting this fragrance that we feel is helping us or at least improving our environment. But for a lot of people, it's causing a lot of issues and a lot of disruption because oxidative stress, the body has to handle those toxins that we're breathing in. And that causes oxidative stress in the body. And then if the body is not efficiently handling those toxins, the body will create inflammation to protect itself. It's very interesting how one can parlay into the next, but that is both oxidative stress and inflammation have been linked to disease. So we want to minimize the chronic versions of both. A certain level of inflammation can serve us well if we injure an ankle or a knee and we have inflammation in that area short term. It's really to isolate that joint so that we don't injure it again or we don't overwork it at that time. We give ourselves time to heal. Unfortunately, what can happen very often is that it doesn't heal rapidly and we become in a cycle of long-term or chronic inflammation. And what also can contribute to that are the things like poor diet and overloading with sugar that can cause inflammation, giving our body the wrong types of foods, and then certainly the toxins that are coming into our system.
Let's talk about diet and lifestyle. So, what's the role of diet and lifestyle in expressing or suppressing some of these genetic traits that one is born with?
Yeah, it's really interesting because again, it is very personalized. When we look at our genes, we can see how well we process certain nutrients. We can look at each nutrient and there's a collection of genes, not just one gene. I wish it was that easy, but that would be related to each nutrient. So let's think of vitamin C and vitamin D and go down that list. When you look at these nutrients, they do certain things for the body. So vitamin C is a very good antioxidant. It's necessary to help our immune function. It's very helpful for the production of collagen. And if we don't process vitamin C, we can take vitamin C as a supplement or we can eat vitamin C foods, rich foods, and it may not serve us as well as we think. So when we look at our DNA and we can appreciate that our body doesn't absorb or process vitamin C well, there are strategies that we can use, certain types of vitamin C, increased levels of vitamin C, as in particular when we are more at risk, when we're, let's say, exposed to a particular illness, or we feel under the weather, we've been under stress. There are many indicators that can help us identify when we need to power up with certain nutrients and when it might not be as necessary. And getting our nutrients through food would be ideal. And I hear certain individuals saying that we should be able to process everything through our food and get everything from food. And I would love for that to be true. But unfortunately, it's multifaceted. One is if our DNA is not efficient and doesn't help us along the way, we can't either convert or absorb or process very efficiently. But secondly is the foods themselves are not necessarily as rich. 50 years ago, our foods were much more rich with the nutrients that would come from the soil. But now that the soil is depleted and the food sits on the shelf or in the trucks for a longer period of time, they're not as fresh. And that allows for those nutrients to diminish to a certain degree. And so we do want to be aware of the benefits of buying locally grown foods fresh from local growers and making sure that they're not impaired by a lot of chemical applications and the pesticides and herbicides. And then making sure that if we're not doing DNA analysis right away, I would say at least be paying attention to the cues that your body is giving, because that can tell us and give us hints as to what we should be looking for. And it's still a guessing game at that point. What we do, it basically up levels us when we do our DNA analysis because it's looking at the facts and it's really pulling from that and getting us closer to a very strategic plan rather than just a plan that we're testing out and then tweaking and then testing. Yeah, it's just that continuous process.
Due to busy schedules, due to poor diet, so many of us are suffering from low energy, poor recovery, even manifesting it in the forms of anxiety.
Yes.
The conventional method is to pop some pills to be able to control that. But how does knowing our DNA help us address these issues?
Fantastic. It is a game changer. It is, in my view, it is the only way to do it because let's look at a case study of someone who has anxiety. It is true that more and more high performing individuals have, and I just saw a statistic within the last week of people who are high performers, athletes, and entrepreneur high execs having anxiety. It's so much more prevalent than it used to be. What DNA allows us to do is really look at the root cause. Instead of taking something that would address the symptom and try to minimize the sense of anxiety, it doesn't even make sense that would work, to be honest. Because it's like a hit or miss a concept. Because when we have anxiety, we can have anxiety because we have too much histamine in our system. We can look at DNA and see how well we process histamine. Now, there again are other clues that the body can give us that we have too much histamine. We could have allergies or a history of allergies. We could have skin issues and skin reactions to things. We could be very reactive or anxious in certain situations where we are overwhelmed by toxins. It's the circumstances of the anxiety that can give us clues as well. But it may not be histamine at all. It could be converting glutamate to GABA. And if our body isn't efficiently converting glutamate, which is an excitatory, to GABA, which is a calming, relaxing substance in our body, and we produce that within our own bodies. When we're not able to convert that, then that can cause anxiety. And there are so many reasons when we look at a particular issue and we're able to assess what the root cause is by looking at DNA, it's no longer an issue. It's not something that comes back over and over again. And every time it comes back, we have to take a pill. We're looking at what the body's function is, what the capability is of the body. And then we're able to support the body at that level and it resolves.
In this domain for a long time and having worked with people, but trying to better their lives, quality of lives by understanding the DNA. What would you say are some of the most common misconceptions that people have about DNA testing and genetic health in general?
One of the biggest misconceptions is that DNA is predetermining. That when I've had people say to me, literally, I don't want to do a DNA test because I don't want to know how I'm going to die. And I said, it's not telling us how you're going to die. It's telling you how you need to live because you can gain better quality of life, greater longevity, more power in your current lives because you're able to zoom into what it is that you want to do, whether it's improve your brain health, improve your muscle tone, do certain things with your body. When you know, it makes sense when you think about anything that you want to look at your car, for instance. If you want to have more horsepower, there are some little things you can improve the exhaust. You can do things to make things externally, or you can look at the engine and say, okay, what is the core competency of this engine? And what am I able to do? And am I within range of what I want to achieve with this vehicle? Or do I need to completely overhaul, do something completely different? Air intake is going to only do so much. When we look at the body, we have to understand that. So we have to know that there are no set outcomes. When we look at our DNA, if we can appreciate that there is a gene that isn't functioning properly, I look at what does that gene do? And when we understand what the gene does, then we're able to appreciate how that's going to affect us. And then we look at what supports the gene, what nutrients or cofactors is that gene reliant on to function properly? How can we help it along? And then what does inhibit it? Because there are a lot of things that can inhibit certain genes. And then we don't want to expose ourselves. If we want to power up that gene, we don't want to be inhibiting it without our realization. Like even taking a certain nutrient can inhibit other genes. We have to know what that looks like in the landscape of things and what our goals are. So it's really important to understand goals. Another misconception is that when we do a DNA test, that is a fear is that could be used against us in some way through insurance and things like that. And my issue with that is, first of all, it's not legal to use your DNA for any purposes. That is your private information. And I always make sure that I use a testing company that does not sell information and so on. But if there is a true concern, use a pseudo. You don't have to use your name to do the test. It's fine. And if somebody orders tests and you order the test, you can order it 5 tests, and who knows who in your family has which test. Only you. And typically the companies do use barcodes. So that's the only thing they have linked to it. You have to link yourself to it so you get the information. And then you know that connection between the barcode and your name. But yeah, those are a few things. Another thing would be, one other misconception I've heard a lot is that DNA is set and it can't be changed. It's true that it can't be changed, but we can influence it through epigenetics, through the way that we eat and the way that we live. And so lifestyle, diet, and environment, if we know that we have certain sleep genes, I'll call them, that affect the circadian rhythm and that affect our inflammation and oxidative stress as a result of poor sleep, it would very much benefit us to not work swing shift, to get sleep during certain hours, to live our lives in a very certain way. If we don't, that can influence our genes in a negative way. So knowing our genes is very powerful because we can make strategic decisions.
So what advice would you give them for those who are overwhelmed with the idea of even exploring genetics?
Take it one step at a time, really. It's nothing that has to be done immediately. Getting a genetic test, and I do recommend that the genetic test that you do is comprehensive, that it's not I won't use any company names, but there are certain companies out there, they only test for your hereditary genes. They only test for a set number of genes. You don't want to be limiting yourself in that way. I think it's very valuable to have a comprehensive view, which isn't that expensive. Now, if you were to do a full genome, it's in the range of $1,000, but you don't need it to be every single gene to get a good picture of. The test that I do is in the hundreds of thousands of genes. So you're getting a really good view of all of the inner workings of your body. And don't be overwhelmed by that. Knowing that you have that information does not mean you have to look at it all. It is taking a step-by-step approach. And one of the things I noticed with my clients was when I did one-on-one work only, I realized that it was really difficult for people to absorb. I tried to make it efficient and make them the 1 hour, 2 hour meetings that would optimize their investment in the time with me. And what I found was that was overwhelming. So instead of doing that, I like to give people a self-paced approach where they're able to learn about genetics at their own pace that makes them feel comfortable. They can go as fast or slow as they want. And then when they have their genetics to look at, then they have someone to guide them through and talk about what their goals are, what their family history is, what their personal health timeline has been, what they've experienced, and then how that in tandem with their genes, what that means to them, how they can leverage that information to their advantage, and then make a personalized health plan where they're able to set forth for the next 12 weeks. And I like to do it in quarters because then you set the plan, you execute the plan, and then you get to really reflect on what was working well for you, what you may have faltered on. Maybe it was just a block in your thought process, or maybe it was just too difficult to implement. Looking at how you felt and how it affected your performance and your health, and making sure that everything is working. And then that next quarter, it's adjusted, and we make sure that we give as much support and as much as many changes are needed.
Let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. You are a disruptor because you are really changing the way things are seen and done in the healthy living and fitness industry. So, what has this journey been like building this business up?
It's been really interesting. I had a wellness center for 11 years, and in person, and it was focused on brain health. It was actually called Peak Brain Performance. So peak performance has definitely been in my history, but I sold the practice to focus on DNA. And when you have such a drive, I want so much to help people be in that preventative, proactive, and performing mindset where they're really committed to optimizing their bodies so that they don't falter and they can achieve all that they want to achieve. And what I've found is it wasn't planned to be a disruptor, right? It's just realizing that the way things have always been done is not working. We have to make a shift. And then you start to realize what's reinforcing those old behaviors and what's contributing to and keeping us in that mindset. And that's what really requires us to be disruptors. We really need to think about what the drivers of are of our habits. What are we doing on a daily basis that's holding us in that position? It's holding us hostage. And then how can we more easily break free from those? And I think having more knowledge and being able to have a strategy to apply that knowledge is the way to really make the difference. It's not easy because you often feel like you're alone in your journey, but that to me is not representative of where it's going to be. I think that more and more people are open to this and more people are seeing the need for it. And when people have successes, it's just even one person having a success is so worth it.
For those who are looking to pursue their passion, right? Because this is something that is product of deep passion for you. For those who are looking to do it but are worried about starting their entrepreneurial journey because of all the fears and the insecurities we have, what advice would you have for them?
That's such a great question. I really feel like the best way to do it is to step forward and start, because there's no way you're going to get feedback, validate your passion, validate that there are others that are also interested in that same topic or that same area. Connect with people who you align with. Make sure that you are giving yourself all of the positive reinforcement that you would give someone else. Don't just let self-doubt, because we all have it. We all experience, it's a daily thing for many of us of you want to make a difference, but then you think, am I enough to make that difference? If you don't do it, who is? And you may look out there in the world and see that someone else is doing something similar to what you're doing, but they're not you. So they may not connect with the same type of person or connect in the same way, or even construct the program or the materials in the same way that would really get through to people and make that difference in their lives. So you really need to give yourself every benefit of believing and then get into action, because that is truly, once you're in action, you gain momentum. And when you gain that momentum, you can appreciate how truly rewarding it is, and you get the feedback and you can tweak it. You're not going to be perfect. That was one of the biggest things. I spent 4 years creating my program, and now granted, it's a very deep topic. So I had a lot of research to do, and I wanted to make sure that I had a comprehensive look at all of the different nutrients, all of the different inflammation genes, etc. But spending a lot of time in the background and not connecting with people and not getting out there, I was lucky because I had the wellness center and I was connecting with people and I was validating what people wanted. But you get that feedback and you can tweak it as you go. You can make changes and make it better and better. And I'm continually making it better. No matter what, no matter how much time I invested in the back office, I knew I still needed to continue to improve it and add to it and just make it more comprehensive. So it's exciting once you get moving.
Tell us how those who are listening to this can connect with you, can work with you. What are some of the services and offerings you provide?
Sure. So I have a program for people who are ready to go and they want to do their DNA and they really don't want to do it alone. I have a program that is a 12-week program. You can go through, there's a lot of coaching involved. There's also a self-paced, as I had already mentioned. And then, of course, if you are not quite sure, but you want to just get a better idea, I do have a couple of ebooks. And one of the ebooks I will make available for free to your audience if you're interested, and they can certainly take a look at it. That is one way. And then I do have a Facebook group which people can join, and that is under personalized health and performance. So that is somewhere that people can jump in and just listen. I do lives and I do a lot of posting and answer questions and things like that in the group. And of course, I'm on Instagram and all the other lovely places.
Lisa, your journey is one that speaks of resilience, that speaks of motivation, that speaks of strength, and speaks about pursuing what we truly believe in. The domain that you're in of health, healthy living, and fitness, there are scores of people saying millions of things on the internet, and sometimes it's so difficult to understand what to follow and what not to follow. I think what makes you unique and incredibly valuable is that what you are offering is just not your opinion or belief system. It's grounded in our genetic framework and our genetic makeup. So the fact that you are able to study that and then help your clients understand things at a factual genetic level and then put a protocol in place that can improve their quality of living speaks volumes about the kind of personality you have and the type of work, the type of impact you're trying to have in the world. Thank you so much for being on the show. Any last words for our audience members?
Thank you. I would just say first priority is listen to your body and really pay attention to what it's telling you, because symptoms are not just an aggravation. They're your one way for your body to communicate to you, and you need to listen and really give your body what it needs.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Lisa. It was great talking to you.
Thank you so much.